make sure that we get everything in the record, we want to right now file this book, which contains numerous certified documents, and we're going to give each of you one of these to review as we proceed. And so Ms. Dillard here, as a court reporter, would like to make this collective exhibit number A. Number 1, excuse me. Be number 2? Okay. We've got one for each member of the board. And I need one over here. Mr. Chairman, let me say that the exhibits are identified on the first 2 pages of this volume. We have numerous letters, but we have a certified copy of the zoning resolution, certified copy of the 2035 comprehensive plan, certified copy of the Sumner County zoning map, and many other things that would affect the decision that you make here tonight. First of all, let me identify who I am. My name is David Amonette. I'm an attorney practices here in Sumner County. In this representation of Save Castalian Springs, which is an unincorporated association of citizens and residents who live in this area. They're well represented here tonight, Mr. Chairman. Is Kevin Williams, who is right there on the front row. He's going to be right after my presentation. We're going to immediately then go into the presentation of Mr. Lockwood, who is a land use engineer with Barge, Wagner, Sumner, and Cannon. After that, we will have a presentation by Mr. Burton, who is a economic specialist that knows how to tell us about the economic impact of this and what impact it will have on this area. Right after I present what I'm doing, Mr. Williams has got a PowerPoint presentation that we're going to show on the screen. We think it's very important that you see that. Mr. Oliver over here on my right, most of you know Mr. Oliver. He represents the Hendersonville Church of Christ. This church owns a large camp right in the area where we're talking about. Scott Haynes is right in the middle there. He represents Joe Haynes and Barbara Haynes. They own property in this area. He will be guiding and going through a question and answer period with Mr. Lockwood so you can understand that. I'm going to talk for a few minutes about how we got here. First of all, I want to thank each of you for serving as a member of this board. Can you hear me there? Okay. First of all, I want to thank each of you for serving on this board and for serving the citizens of this county. It's important what you do. It's what the work that you do affects this county in a major way. And you've got probably one of the biggest decisions before you tonight that you've had in a long, long time. And we understand the seriousness of it. We not only up here talking, you're going to have all kind of people that'll tell you their opinion, and their opinions are important. They are one factor to consider in making your decision. But it's important for us to introduce material evidence that justify denying this application, and that's what we're asking you to do. We're all, well, most of these people here, except a few, are in opposition to this application. And we believe that we have the law on our side, we believe we have the facts on our side, we have the evidence on our side, and when all is said and done, we think you can come to no conclusion other than to deny this request. As I said, this decision is really important. It's going to affect one of the most precious areas that we have in our county. Not only in our county, but in our state. This is a legacy that's been entrusted to us to protect. We have Wynwood. We have Craigfont. We have so many historic monuments out there that we have the responsibility of protecting. And the 2035 plan that Mr. White mentioned a while ago does just that. We believe that's a good plan, and we believe the law that he cited is correct. The only problem Mr. White did when he got up here, he ignored what the zoning law is. He, in effect, by his argument, is asking you to zone this property. And you know you don't have the authority to do that. That vests with Sumner County. Let's look at the zoning ordinance. This property is zoned R1A. And under R1A, you have some specific uses that you can use the property for. Then you have some that you can use it on appeal. Then the rest is prohibited. And it's really not too complicated when you think about it. It says under R1A, the uses permitted in this district include single-family and two-family dwellings, mobile homes, and other uses that are permitted in the residential A district. Those uses permitted in the residential A district includes homes, customary home occupations, boarding homes, the use of illuminated signs, farming uses not clearly defined in the code, and accessory uses to the above-mentioned uses. The Sumner County zoning resolution, however, never indicates that mining and quarrying are permitted uses in the R1A district. And this property that we are talking about here tonight and where they want to put this hole in the ground is zone R1A. Moreover, those uses that are permitted upon appeal in the R1A district also exclude mining and quarrying. The uses permitted on appeal in an R1A district includes churches, schools, cluster residential developments, cemeteries, buildings for government uses except storage facilities, structures for clubs and philanthropic activities, and other similar uses and structures. All other uses pursuant to the plain language of section 7.3 of the zoning code, that is the zoning resolution that you have a copy of, and all of you know what that is because you've seen it probably 1,000 times, are specifically prohibited. The language in the zoning code could not be more clear. The limitations in the zoning code could not be more clear. In fact, there is no ambiguity whatsoever. Mining and quarrying are not permitted as a special exception or a use permitted with conditions in a R1A district. I have to admit, I was a little confused when I first went down and picked up this application. I was frankly totally confused because we had Mr. White, as you know, he has a form in there that says he's an agent for this applicant. And so he has the authority to fill out all these forms and put in the whole thing, which he did. But in his cover letter, he said this property is zoned agricultural. And he refers to the language in the section of the zoning resolution as a basis for his use on appeal. I couldn't understand it. When the other forms he presented clearly show the property is zoned R1A. I know some of you are bound to have noticed that. I can't get over it. Mr. White, I've known him for years. He's a very capable lawyer. How he could bring confusing information here to you tonight and ask that you act upon it, I still don't understand. I still don't understand his argument a while ago when he says you need to rely on this 2035 plan and because the law says these decisions have to be consistent with that plan, and that's true. The only problem is you can't ignore the law. The zoning resolution is the law. It sets forth what uses are allowed, what uses are allowed on appeal, and what are unpermitted uses. And consequently, in this zone classification, where this property is located, does not allow the use requested. Finally, I want to sit down, but I want to point out one thing. It is important, as it was said in the book of Proverbs, if you have no vision, the people perish. That vision set forth in that 2035 plan has a vision for this area, and that is to protect it. That is a precious asset that we have, and we are charged with the responsibility of keeping it and not changing it because the law says this is protected. It's in your zoning resolution. Please don't abrogate the law. Make sure you protect these valuable resources. Thank you.
Neighbors and the community as a whole. direct you to the screen. We're going to be talking about things tonight, a lot of visual things, and as I do that, I want you to recognize that perception and scale can alter the way we make decisions. For example, we've all seen the endless triangle. We've all seen the endless staircase. These visual deceptions are kind of like what they say about statistics. You know how that saying goes, there are lies, darn lies, and statistics. The same thing can be true of maps and visual aids, okay? So let's get started. In yesterday's Tennessean, Mr. White wrote an editorial, and he said, "There are a number of quarries located in Middle Tennessee where residential development has continued after quarry operations have begun and where homes have been built near active quarries." And that argument has been made before you several times tonight. At the June 30th meeting, they put up a PowerPoint very, well, I'm not going to say what it was, but it was a PowerPoint anyway, and they showed a series of maps, and I want to show you the same maps as well. The first thing they cited was a quarry in Calera, Alabama, and they said that those two things up there in blue, let's see, does that work? Can you see that? Blue there, those were very recent residential developments, and that's probably the case. But what they didn't really point out to you was the scale of this map. You can see that that little segment there is 1,000 feet. Okay? So if we apply that 1,000 feet, oops, sorry, I'm going in the wrong direction. I beg your pardon, wrong button. If we apply that 1,000 feet again to these developments, little dancing yellow lines, you can see that these developments are quite some distance away from the quarry, about 1,500 feet. Okay? The next thing they showed us was a development in Franklin. And at the scale they had their map, it looked like this was one big development. It was all outlined in blue. Today, I've outlined one of them in red, as you can see here. That's because they are two completely separate developments. And if you look at the one in blue, it's not a typical residential development like the kind that we have here in Castalian Springs. Instead, it's either apartments or condominiums, very, very dense property. It is not a good comparison by any stretch of the imagination. So if we look at the actual distance from a reasonable residential area to the quarry, it's about 500 feet separated. We looked at Rutherford County. They cited that as an example. You can see the one up there at the top is quite some distance. It's like, I don't know, 4,000 feet. We'll just be conservative and ignore that. It'll be nice tonight. The other one we'll look at, and that's about 1,500 feet, again, from the quarry. They also pointed out this development in Davidson County, Tennessee, and I believe Mr. White wrote about it in his editorial as well. And it is a very high-end community with lots and lots of rich people, and it is very, very close to the quarry site. But if you will look closely at the quarry site, you will see that it is not an active quarry. It is just a hole in the ground. And so we don't consider that to be an adequate comparison either. Finally, the site of Hermitage, I believe actually John Gordon, the engineer, spoke about it just a few minutes ago. I'd like to point out, of course, that Summit Medical Center, which is right there, and then that is the Hermitage Community Center right there, are both commercial uses. Those aren't residential uses. Those commercial uses have, within the last 2 decades or so, grown towards the quarry. What is particularly interesting about Summit Regional Medical Center is that I got a letter from the director of facilities, basically the plant manager there, this afternoon. And he kindly informed me that they have to schedule surgeries around the daily blast at that quarry. And that if the quarry schedule changes, the quarry has to call the hospital. And then they might have to reschedule surgeries to avoid the blasts.